The abandoned research station hung in space like a broken toy. Its hull was dark and pitted with small meteor impacts. No lights showed through its windows. No signals came from its communication arrays. But according to the ship's sensors, the station still had air and power deep inside its core. Captain Jake Morrison studied the station through the Discovery's main viewer. "Any idea who built it, Ben?" Science Officer Ben Parker checked his readings again. "The design matches Vorth. Collective construction methods, but Captain, this doesn't make sense. The Vorth are known for never abandoning their research no matter how dangerous it gets. And yet here we are, looking at an abandoned Vorth station," Jake said. "Lisa, any response to our hails?" Communications Officer Lisa Chang shook her head. "Nothing, sir. The station's communication systems are active, but nobody's answering." Dr. Amanda Foster looked up from her console. "Captain, I'm reading some unusual energy patterns from the station. They're very faint, but they seem to be concentrated in the lower levels." Jake made his decision. "We're going aboard. Lisa, you're with me. Ben, Amanda, you monitor from here. If anything goes wrong, you get the Discovery back to Earth." "Sir," Ben protested, "regulations say we should report this to Earth Command first." "Earth Command is 40 light-years away," Jake replied. "By the time we get a response, whatever's on that station might be gone." The docking tube connected with a hollow clang that echoed through both ships. Jake and Lisa floated through the tube in their spacesuits, emergency lights casting strange shadows on the walls. The station's docking bay was empty except for a few pieces of equipment floating in the zero gravity. "Air pressure is good," Lisa reported, checking her suit's readings. "We can breathe in here if we want to." They made their way through the station's corridors. Emergency lighting provided just enough illumination to see where they were going. Most of the doors they passed were sealed shut, but a few stood open, revealing empty rooms filled with complex equipment. "This place gives me the creeps," Lisa muttered. Jake had to agree. Something about the station felt wrong, as if its builders had left in a great hurry. They found what they were looking for in the station's central core, a massive computer system that was still running. "Can you access their files?" Jake asked. Lisa plugged her portable translator into the station's data ports. "Give me a few minutes. Vorth systems are tricky, but I've worked with their technology before." While Lisa worked, Jake explored the rest of the control room. The walls were covered with displays showing what looked like star charts and energy readings. But these weren't maps of distant space. These were detailed scans of Earth's solar system. "Jake," Lisa called out, her voice tight with concern. "You need to see this." She had managed to access the station's log files. The computer screen showed entries dating back several years, all written in the Vorth language but translated by Lisa's software. Day 1247. The first entry read, "We have established monitoring station at the edge of the silent zone. Our mission is to observe the third planet and record any changes in the deep energy patterns. The Council of Minds believes the long sleep may be ending." Jake felt that familiar chill. "The long sleep?" Lisa scrolled to another entry. Day 1733. "The energy pulses from the deep ocean trenches are becoming stronger. We have detected movement at depths previously thought to be lifeless. The small surface dwellers remain unaware of what stirs below them." "Small surface dwellers," Jake said quietly. "They're talking about us, about humans." The log entries continued for several more years, each one showing growing concern from the Vorth researchers. They wrote about detecting massive structures moving in Earth's deepest ocean trenches. They recorded energy patterns that seemed to follow some kind of intelligence. And they watched as something vast and ancient began to wake up. The final entry was dated only 3 months ago. Day 2891. "The pulse frequency is increasing dramatically. We have confirmed the presence of multiple large entities in the ocean deeps. Their bioenergy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. We must leave before the small ones notice us watching their protectors. If the sleeping guardians fully awaken, they must not know we were here." Lisa and Jake stared at the screen, in silence. Finally, Jake activated his communicator. "Discovery, this is Morrison. We're coming back. Prepare for immediate departure. Sir? Ben's voice crackled through the communicator. Did you find something? We found answers, Jake replied. And I don't like them. Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Kevin Hughes was having the worst day of his scientific career. The Deep Ocean Monitoring station where he worked had been picking up strange readings for weeks, but today those readings had become impossible to ignore. Susan, he called to his research partner, Dr. Susan Walsh. You need to look at these seismic readings. Susan walked over to Kevin's workstation, drying her hands on a lab towel. She had been working with water samples from the deepest ocean trenches, trying to understand why their chemical composition had been changing lately. What am I looking at? She asked, studying the waves and patterns on Kevin's screens. Seismic activity from the Mariana Trench, Kevin explained. But look at the pattern. This isn't random earthquake activity. This is rhythmic, purposeful. Susan frowned. Equipment malfunction? That's what I thought at first, so I checked with monitoring stations around the world. Susan, they're all picking up the same patterns. The Puerto Rico Trench, the Peru-Chile Trench, the Japan Trench. Something is moving down there, and it's moving in all the deep ocean trenches at the same time. Susan studied the readings more carefully. Kevin was right. The seismic patterns showed massive objects moving through the deepest parts of Earth's oceans. Objects that were far too large to be any known form of sea life. How large are we talking about? She asked. Kevin pulled up another display. Based on the seismic displacement, some of these objects are over a mile long, and they're not just moving randomly. Look at this. He showed her a map of the world's oceans with the seismic activity marked in different colors. The pattern was clear. The objects were moving toward specific locations as if they were taking positions or preparing for something. Kevin, Susan said slowly, we need to report this to someone. I don't know who, but someone needs to know about this. Before Kevin could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the research station. Red lights flashed in the corridors. The computerized voice of the station's emergency system echoed through the building. All personnel to emergency stations. Massive seismic event detected. All personnel to emergency stations. Kevin and Susan ran to the main monitoring room, where their colleagues were gathered around the primary sensor display. What they saw made them stop in their tracks. The deep ocean scanner showed something rising from the Mariana Trench. Something enormous. The object was over 2 miles across and perfectly symmetrical, like a giant piece of architecture rather than anything natural. What is that thing? Someone whispered. Dr. Patricia Lewis, the station's chief scientist, was trying to make sense of the readings. I don't know, but it's not alone. I'm showing similar objects rising from deep ocean trenches all around the world. Far above Earth in the cold depths of space, Captain Morrison and his crew were receiving their own shocking news. A priority transmission had reached them from the HFY homeworld, broadcast on all frequencies as if the sender wanted the entire galaxy to hear it. The message was brief, but devastating. Elder Zixthala, the ancient being who had warned the Galactic Council away from Earth, was dying. And in her final moments, she had chosen to reveal a secret her people had kept for millions of years. To all who hear this message, the translation software rendered her words into human speech. I am Zixthala of the HFY, and I speak now with my final breath. For 3 million years, my people have kept silent about the third world of the yellow star. We have kept silent because we were sworn to silence by those who sleep beneath its waters. Jake gripped the arms of his captain's chair as the message continued. We seeded many worlds with life in the early days of our empire, but only one world did our children claim as guardians. The humans believe they rule Earth, but they are merely the surface dwellers. The true masters sleep below, and they have slept since before our empire began. They wake now because their time of watching is over. They wake because their chosen ones have finally reached the stars. The transmission ended with a sound that might have been Elder Zixthala's final breath. The bridge of the Discovery was silent except for the hum of the ship's engines. Captain, Lisa said quietly, I'm receiving multiple transmissions from Earth. Something's happening down there. Jake stood up slowly. Set course for Earth. Maximum speed. Sir? Ben asked. What do we tell Earth Command when they ask what we found out here? Jake stared at the main viewer where Earth's sun was just a distant star among many. We tell them the truth. We tell them that humanity isn't alone on Earth. And we tell them that our real neighbors are finally waking up. The massive HFY mothership drifted through space like a floating city. Its hull gleamed with a dark metal that had seen 3 million years of travel between stars. Inside the ship's great council chamber, beings from across the galaxy gathered around a circular platform that glowed with soft blue light. Elder Zixthala stood at the center of the platform. Her body was tall and thin, covered in pale skin that looked almost transparent. Her large eyes held the wisdom of countless centuries. She had lived longer than most entire civilizations had existed. When she spoke, every creature in the chamber listened. We have received another request, she said, her voice carrying easily through the vast room. The humans of Earth wish to join our alliance. They offer trade agreements and military support. A low murmur ran through the assembled delegates. Representatives from dozens of worlds shifted in their seats. Some had scales, others had fur. A few breathed methane through tubes connected to tanks on their backs. But all of them waited to hear what the eldest species in the galaxy would say about the newcomers called humans. What do we know of these humans? Asked Ambassador Krelthon of the Vorth Collective. His people were known throughout the galaxy as fearless explorers who would investigate any mystery no matter how dangerous. Elder Zixthala's expression changed. For the first time in the memory of most delegates, she looked uncomfortable. We know enough, she said slowly. We do not go there. We will not go there. And neither should you. The silence that followed was complete. In 3 million years of galactic history, the HFY had never refused contact with any species. They had guided young civilizations, mediated wars, and helped establish trade routes across half the galaxy. They were known for their endless patience and willingness to help any species that asked. Elder, Ambassador Krelthon said carefully, surely you cannot mean to reject an entire species without explanation. These humans have shown remarkable progress. In just a few thousand years, they have gone from primitive tools to faster-than-light travel. I mean exactly what I said, Elder Zixthala replied. Her voice was firm now with an edge that made several delegates lean back in their seats. Earth exists in what we call the Silent Zone. We have marked it as such in our star charts for over 2 million years. No HFY ship has entered that system. No HFY ship ever will. Light years away from the HFY mothership, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Discovery. His ship was one of humanity's newest deep space exploration vessels, equipped with the most advanced sensors Earth could build. Jake was a career military officer who had volunteered for long-range reconnaissance missions. He liked the quiet of deep space and the challenge of mapping unknown regions. Captain, called Lisa Chang from the communication station, I'm picking up a transmission. It's not directed at us, but it's strong enough that our sensors caught it. What kind of transmission? Jake asked, walking over to look at her screens. It appears to be some kind of diplomatic communication. Multiple species involved judging by the different signal patterns. The translation software is having trouble with most of it, but I'm getting fragments. Ben Parker, the ship's science officer, looked up from his console. Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures in the direction of that transmission. Whatever's out there, it's big. Really big. Jake nodded. Put the transmission on speakers, Lisa. Let's see what we can make of it. The bridge filled with strange sounds. Some were musical tones that rose and fell in complex patterns. Others sounded like clicks and whistles. But occasionally, the translation software would catch a phrase in standard galactic common, the trade language most spacefaring species used. Trade agreements, the computer voice said, translating one fragment. Military support. Then, after a pause, Earth. Then, much clearer, we do not go there. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Did that transmission just mention Earth? Yes, sir, Lisa confirmed. The computer is flagging multiple references to our home system. And they're saying they don't go there? Ben asked. Who doesn't go where? Jake stared at the main screen, which showed only empty space and distant stars. Lisa, can you clean up that signal? I want to know who was talking and what exactly they said about Earth. For the next hour, Lisa worked with the ship's computer to improve the translation. What? They discovered made Jake call an emergency meeting with his senior staff. According to this transmission, Jake said, standing before his officers in the ship's small conference room, we just listened in on a meeting of something called the Galactic Council. They were discussing humanity's request to join some kind of alliance. Dr. Amanda Foster, the ship's xenobiologist, leaned forward. And they refused? Not just refused, Jake replied. They actively warned other species to stay away from Earth. The speaker was someone called Elder Zix Thala, apparently from a species called the Keithvar. I've never heard of them, Ben said. That's because they've never made contact with us, Jake explained. But according to this transmission, they've been around for 3 million years. That makes them the oldest known species in the galaxy. Amanda looked puzzled. But that doesn't make sense. If they're that old and that advanced, why haven't they contacted us? Most species make first contact within a few decades of a civilization achieving faster than light travel. That's what we need to find out, Jake said. Lisa, have you been able to track where that transmission came from? Yes, sir. The source is approximately 40 light-years from here. But, Captain, there's something else. I've been analyzing our long-range sensor data, and I found something interesting. Lisa activated the room's display screen, showing a 3-dimensional map of local space. Earth's solar system appeared as a small cluster of dots near the center. Around it, dozens of colored lines showed the paths of various ships and trade routes. These are shipping lanes used by different alien species, Lisa explained. I've been tracking them for months as part of our reconnaissance mission. Look at how they move around our solar system. Jake studied the display and saw what she meant. Every single trade route curved around Earth's solar system, some adding dozens of light-years to what should have been straight-line journeys between star systems. They're avoiding us, Ben said quietly. Not just avoiding, Amanda corrected. Look at the pattern. These routes are carefully planned to stay as far away from Earth as possible while still connecting the same destinations. This isn't coincidental avoidance, this is deliberate. Jake felt that chill again, stronger this time. How long have they been doing this? I can track back about 50 years with our current data, Lisa said. But Captain, some of these routes show signs of being much older. Decades, maybe centuries older. So alien species have been avoiding Earth since before we even achieved spaceflight, Jake said slowly. The question is why. Dr. Foster pulled up another display showing Earth's position relative to nearby star systems. Captain, I think I know what we need to do. We need to find out what the aliens call our region of space. What do you mean? Every species has names for different regions of the galaxy. If they're all avoiding this area, they probably have a specific name for it. A name that might tell us why they stay away. Jake nodded. Lisa, can you scan for more transmissions? Specifically, any that mention Earth or our solar system? Already on it, Captain. I've set up passive monitoring on all frequencies. If anyone out there is talking about us, we'll hear it. Over the following days, the Discovery's crew monitored dozens of alien communications. Most were routine trade negotiations or navigational updates. But slowly, a pattern emerged. Every time an alien ship's course took it anywhere near Earth's solar system, the same phrase appeared in their transmissions. The silent zone, Amanda read from the translation display. That's what they call our region of space. But there's more, Lisa added. I found something else. Look at this. She displayed a series of star charts that had been transmitted between alien vessels. Each chart showed the same thing. A large area of space around Earth marked with a symbol that appeared across multiple alien languages. What does the symbol mean? Jake asked. Amanda had been working with the translation software for hours. The closest translation I can get is the Sleeping Guardians. But Captain, that doesn't make sense. Guardians of what? Jake stared at the symbol on the screen. It was simple but somehow unsettling, like a warning sign whose meaning had been lost to time. "I don't know," he said finally. "But I think we're going to find out. Had chosen you. We will not return." In the depths of the Pacific Ocean, Dr. Kevin Hughes was still in mental con. 6 months had passed since the Guardian ships first rose from Earth's oceans. The world had changed in ways no one could have imagined. Cities that had once looked out at empty seas now saw massive crystalline structures floating on the horizon like impossible mountains. Dr. Susan Walsh stood in the newly built Antarctic Research Complex, staring at readings that would have been considered science fiction just a year ago. The Guardian structures in Antarctica had created something extraordinary, a crystalline network that stretched across the entire continent, pulsing with energy patterns that seemed to connect to similar networks around the globe. "Kevin," she called to her research partner, who was working at a console covered with alien symbols. "I think I'm finally understanding how this network operates." Dr. Kevin Hughes looked up from his work. Since his first contact with the Guardian 6 months ago, he had been learning their communication methods. It was slow, difficult work, but gradually he was beginning to understand concepts that no human had ever known. "What have you found?" Kevin asked, walking over to Susan's workstation. "The network isn't just on Earth," Susan explained, pointing to a 3-dimensional display that showed energy patterns extending far beyond the planet. "It's connected to similar networks on other worlds throughout the galaxy. Earth isn't an isolated Guardian base, it's part of something much bigger." Kevin studied the display with growing amazement. "How many worlds?" "Thousands, maybe tens of thousands. Kevin, the Guardians haven't just been protecting Earth, they've been protecting the entire galaxy." Before Kevin could respond, the console in front of him began glowing with the blue light that indicated an incoming Guardian communication. He placed his hands on the crystalline surface and felt the familiar sensation of another consciousness touching his mind. The Guardian's message was urgent. Something was approaching the outer edge of the galaxy, something that had been traveling toward them for thousands of years. The long-anticipated threat was finally arriving. "Susan," Kevin said, opening his eyes. "We need to contact Admiral Roberts immediately." At Earth Defense Headquarters, Admiral Frank Roberts was already dealing with reports of unusual activity throughout the solar system. Guardian ships that had remained stationary for months were suddenly moving to new positions. Energy readings from the crystalline networks were spiking to levels his scientists couldn't explain. "Sir," reported Commander Helen Price, "we're receiving priority communications from Guardian installations worldwide. They're all saying the same thing. Something big is coming." Frank activated his secure communication line to Captain Jake Morrison, who was now serving as humanity's primary liaison with the various alien species that had begun approaching Earth since the Guardian awakening. "Jake," Frank said when the connection was established, "please tell me you have some idea what's got the Guardian so worked up." Captain Morrison's voice came through clearly from the diplomatic station he now commanded at the edge of Earth's solar system. "Admiral, I've been in contact with representatives from a dozen different species. They're all reporting the same phenomenon: massive energy disturbances at the galaxy's edge. Something is testing the outer defense networks." "Defense networks?" Frank asked. "Sir, according to the aliens I've been talking to, the galaxy has been protected by Guardian networks for millions of years. Most species didn't even know the networks existed. They just knew that certain threats never seemed to make it past the galaxy's outer rim." Frank felt a familiar chill. "And now something has?" "Something is trying to, sir. The Keithvar ambassador says her people's records show similar events happening every few million years. Each time the Guardian networks activate and repel the threat. But each time the threat is stronger than before." In the Antarctic Research Complex, Kevin was experiencing something he had never felt before: direct communication with what the Guardians called the Prime Guardian. This entity was older and more powerful than any of the beings he had previously encountered. Its consciousness was vast, containing memories that stretched back millions of years. Through this connection, Kevin learned the true history of the galaxy. The Guardian networks had been established in response to a threat from outside known space. This threat took the form of entities that consumed not just planets or stars, but the very fabric of space-time itself. They moved between galaxies, like a plague, leaving nothing but empty void in their wake. The Guardian networks were designed to detect these entities when they approached and coordinate a galaxy-wide defense. But the entities had been learning from each encounter, adapting their methods and growing stronger. The defenses that had worked for millions of years might not be enough this time. The Prime Guardian showed Kevin images of the approaching threat. Dark shapes moving through the void between galaxies, each one larger than a solar system. They absorbed energy from everything they encountered, growing stronger as they consumed stars and planets. But there was hope. The Prime Guardian explained that humanity had been chosen not just to serve as representatives, but to provide something the Guardian networks had been missing: unpredictability. For millions of years, the Guardian defenses had followed the same patterns. The entities had learned to counter these patterns. Humans, with their chaotic creativity and refusal to follow established rules, could provide new strategies that the entities would not expect. Human unpredictability, combined with Guardian technology and galactic cooperation, might be enough to stop the threat permanently. Kevin opened his eyes to find Susan watching him with concern. "How long was I connected?" he asked. 4 hours, Susan replied. "Kevin, what did you learn?" Before Kevin could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the research complex. Emergency lights flashed red as the computerized voice announced, "All personnel to emergency stations. Massive energy surge detected. All personnel to emergency stations." Kevin and Susan ran to the main monitoring station, where their colleagues were staring at readings that seemed impossible. The Guardian network wasn't just active, it was preparing for war. Admiral Frank Roberts received the call he had been dreading. Captain Morrison's voice was tight with urgency as he reported what long-range sensors were detecting at the galaxy's edge. "Admiral, the outer defense networks are under attack. Guardian installations on dozens of worlds are powering up to maximum levels. And sir, we're detecting movement from the direction of the galactic core. Massive objects, traveling faster than anything in our records." Frank looked at the tactical display showing the positions of Guardian fleets throughout the solar system. Every ship was moving to predetermined coordinates, taking positions that formed a complex three-dimensional pattern around Earth and its neighboring planets. "Jake," Frank said slowly, "are you telling me that Earth is about to become the center of a galactic war?" "Not just Earth, sir. According to Guardian communications, every world with a Guardian installation is preparing for the same thing. But Earth is special. The Guardians here aren't just defending. They're coordinating the entire galactic defense network." Frank realized what this meant. Humanity wasn't just going to witness the greatest battle in galactic history. They were going to be at the center of it. Dr. Susan Walsh made a discovery that would change everything. While monitoring the Guardian network's energy patterns, she detected something unexpected. The network was learning from human technology. Guardian systems were incorporating human computer algorithms, human communication protocols, even human tactical strategies. "Kevin," she called out excitedly, "the Guardians aren't just teaching us, they're learning from us too." Kevin looked at her readings and understood immediately. They need our chaos, our unpredictability. That's why they chose us. "But there's more," Susan continued. "Look at these energy patterns. The Guardian network is adapting human creativity into its defensive algorithms. We're not just representatives or soldiers. We're evolution. We're the next step in Guardian development." The realization hit both of them at the same time. Humanity hadn't been chosen to serve the Guardians. They had been chosen to become Guardians themselves. As if responding to this understanding, the crystalline console began glowing brighter than ever before. Kevin placed his hands on its surface and felt not just one Guardian consciousness, but thousands of them, all connected through the galactic network. The message they sent was simple but profound. Welcome to the network. Welcome to your true purpose. The final test begins now. Above them, Guardian ships throughout the solar system began broadcasting on all frequencies. The message went out to every species in the galaxy, in every known language. The ancient threat returns. All who value life, All who cherish existence itself, unite now under the Guardian banner. The time of waiting is over. The time of fighting has begun. Admiral Frank Roberts stood in his command center, watching as ships from dozens of alien species began arriving in Earth's solar system. Former enemies were joining with old allies. Species that had never met were working together under Guardian coordination. Humanity found itself at the center of the greatest military alliance in galactic history. And in the distance, at the edge of known space, something vast and 1 year after the Great Awakening, Captain Jake Morrison stood before the largest gathering of alien species in galactic history. The new embassy station hung in space between Earth and Mars, a massive structure built with both human engineering and Guardian technology. Ships from over 200 different worlds surrounded the station, their crews waiting to hear what humanity had to say about the galaxy's future. Jake wore the new uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, but he still felt like a simple ship captain who had stumbled into something far bigger than himself. Behind him, through the embassy's massive viewing windows, Earth glowed blue and green in the distance. But now it was surrounded by Guardian ships that had become a permanent part of the planet's defenses. Honored delegates, Jake began, his words being translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. 6 months ago, our galaxy faced its greatest threat. Entities from beyond our space attempted to consume everything we hold dear. Today, I stand before you to discuss how we prevented that catastrophe and what it means for our future. In the audience, Queen Atlas of the Keithavar leaned forward with interest. She was young by her species' standards, only a few thousand years old, but she had been chosen to replace the late Elder Zixathala as her people's representative to the new galactic order. Jake continued his address. The battle at the galaxy's edge lasted only 3 days, but those 3 days changed everything. The Guardian networks, with support from every species represented here today, successfully repelled the extragalactic entities. But more importantly, we learned something about ourselves and about the future. The truth was that the battle had been closer than most species realized. The entities from beyond the galaxy had been stronger than expected, their ability to consume space-time itself making traditional weapons useless. But humanity's chaotic tactical thinking, combined with Guardian technology and galactic cooperation, had created strategies the entities couldn't predict or counter. Dr. Kevin Hughes, now serving as Earth's chief Guardian liaison, had been instrumental in the victory. His ability to communicate directly with the Guardian network had allowed for real-time coordination between human creativity and ancient defensive systems. The combination had proven unstoppable. The Guardian network is no longer just a defensive system, Jake explained to the assembled delegates. It has evolved into something new, a partnership between ancient wisdom and young innovation, and humanity has been asked to serve as the bridge between the old ways and the new. Ambassador Krelthon of the Vorth Collective raised one of his forearms to ask a question. Captain Morrison, what does this mean for those species who wish to join this new alliance? What are the requirements? Jake had been expecting this question. Over the past year, dozens of species had requested to join what was being called the New Compact. Some were motivated by fear of future threats. Others were attracted by the technological advances that Guardian cooperation offered. But all of them wanted to know what would be expected of them. The requirements are simple, Jake replied. Respect for life, willingness to defend others when they cannot defend themselves, and acceptance of the principle that no species stands alone in this galaxy. It sounded easy, but Jake knew the reality was more complex. The Guardian network had awakened similar networks on worlds throughout the galaxy. Some planets that had never known they hosted Guardian installations suddenly found themselves with ancient protectors rising from their oceans or emerging from underground complexes. Not all species had reacted well to learning they weren't alone on their homeworlds. Some had tried to fight their guardians. Others had attempted to bargain with them or worship them as gods. But slowly, most had come to understand what humanity had learned. The Guardians weren't conquerors or gods. They were partners. Dr. Susan Walsh, working from her new laboratory on the embassy station, had made discoveries that revolutionized galactic understanding of the Guardian network. Her research showed that the network wasn't limited to their galaxy. Similar networks existed in neighboring galaxies, all connected through quantum entanglement across impossible distances. We're part of something bigger than we ever imagined, Susan explained to a gathering of the galaxy's top scientists. The Guardian networks form a universal immune system designed to protect life itself from threats that could destroy entire galactic clusters. This revelation had profound implications. The entities that had attacked their galaxy weren't unique. They were part of a universal plague that moved between galaxies, consuming everything in their path. But now, for the first time in millions of years, the immune system was fighting back effectively. The key had been humanity's contribution to the network. Human unpredictability and refusal to accept limitations had given the Guardians new strategies and approaches. Where the network had once been purely defensive, it was now actively hunting down the entities and destroying them before they could threaten other galaxies. Admiral Frank Roberts, now commanding the joint Human-Guardian fleet, received daily reports of successful operations throughout local galactic space. Teams of humans working with Guardian technology were tracking down entity remnants and eliminating them permanently. "It's remarkable," Frank told Jake during one of their regular briefings. "A year ago, we didn't even know these things existed. Now we're hunting them across multiple galaxies." But the most significant change had been in how other species viewed humanity. The fear and uncertainty that had once caused aliens to avoid Earth had been replaced by something else: respect. Captain Morrison concluded his address to the Galactic Assembly with words that would be remembered for generations. 1 year ago, the galaxy's oldest species steered clear of Earth because they feared what they might awaken. Today, they come to Earth because they know we stand together against the darkness. We are no longer just humans, Keith Varvorth, or any other single species. We are Guardians. The applause that followed came from beings who had never before considered humans as equals. Now they recognized humanity as the species that had helped save not just their galaxy, but potentially the entire universe. In the months that followed, the new compact grew to include over 500 species. Trade routes that had once avoided Earth's solar system now led directly to it. The planet that had once existed in the Silent Zone became the most visited world in the galaxy. But perhaps the most important change was happening on Earth itself. In laboratories around the world, human scientists worked alongside Guardian entities to develop technologies that would have been considered impossible just years before. Faster-than-light communication, matter replication, and energy manipulation became routine parts of human technology. Dr. Kevin Hughes, now able to communicate with Guardians across the galaxy as easily as he once spoke to his colleagues, made a discovery that hinted at even greater things to come. The Guardian network was showing signs of evolution, developing new capabilities that neither humans nor Guardians had possessed alone. "We're witnessing the birth of something entirely new," Kevin reported to the Global Science Council. "Not just human-Guardian cooperation, but actual fusion. The network is becoming something that combines the best of both species." The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just learning from the Guardians or serving alongside them. They were becoming something new together, a hybrid species that combined ancient wisdom with youthful innovation. Ambassador Quen Atlas of the Keithvar perhaps said it best during her final report to her people's home world. "For 3 million years we have known that Earth's Guardians were different from those on other worlds. We believed it was because they were older or more powerful. We were wrong. They were different because they were waiting for the right species to join with them and create something the universe had never seen before." As Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the embassy station, watching ships from across the galaxy arrive to conduct business with Earth, he reflected on how much had changed. A year ago, he had been a simple ship captain exploring empty space. Now he was humanity's voice in a galactic community that looked to Earth for leadership and guidance. But the most remarkable thing wasn't how much humanity had changed the galaxy. It was how the galaxy had changed humanity. Humans were no longer just the inhabitants of a small blue planet. They were the newest guardians of life itself, protectors of something far greater than any single world or species. In the depths of Earth's oceans, the guardian entities that had slept for millions of years continued their work alongside their human partners. Together, they monitored the vast network that protected countless worlds and billions of lives, and together, they watched for new threats that might emerge from the darkness between galaxies. The galaxy's oldest species no longer steered clear of Earth. Instead, they came seeking the wisdom and strength that could only be found in the partnership between ancient guardians and young humanity. And in that partnership, the universe itself had found new hope for the future. Admiral Frank Roberts stood in the command center of Earth Defense Headquarters, watching reports flood in from around the globe. Every major ocean research facility was sending the same message. Massive structures were rising from the deepest parts of Earth's oceans. "Sir," reported Commander Helen Price, his chief of operations, "we have confirmed sightings in the Pacific, Atlantic, Indian, and Arctic oceans. Whatever these things are, they're appearing everywhere at once." Frank studied the global map on the main display. Red dots marked locations where the structures had been detected. The pattern was clear and disturbing. They were rising from every major oceanic trench on the planet. "Any response from our submarine fleets?" Frank asked. "That's the problem, sir," Helen replied. "Our subs can't get close enough to get clear readings. Something is interfering with their navigation systems when they approach the structures." The crews report feeling dizzy and confused. Frank's secure communication line chimed. The caller identification showed it was Captain Jake Morrison aboard the UES Discovery. Frank had sent Jake on a deep space reconnaissance mission months ago. He should still be light years away from Earth. "Morrison," Frank said, accepting the call, "please tell me you have some good news." "I wish I did, Admiral." Jake's voice came through clearly despite the vast distance. "We're en route to Earth at maximum speed. Sir, I need to brief you on what we've discovered out here. It's connected to what's happening in your oceans." Frank felt his stomach drop. "How could you possibly know what's happening here?" "Because the aliens have been watching it happen for years, sir. They've been monitoring Earth, waiting for this exact moment." Over the next hour, Jake transmitted everything the Discovery had learned. The abandoned alien research station, the warnings about sleeping guardians, and Elder Zixathala's final message about the true rulers of Earth. Frank listened to it all with growing amazement and fear. "So you're telling me," Frank said when Jake finished, "that these ocean structures belong to some kind of ancient species that's been sleeping under our oceans for millions of years?" "That's exactly what I'm telling you, sir. And according to the aliens, these beings have been waiting for humanity to reach a certain level of development. Specifically, they've been waiting for us to achieve space travel." Frank looked at the map again, seeing the red dots in a new light. "They're not invading. They're waking up because we finally did something they were waiting for." "Yes, sir. And, Admiral, there's something else. We intercepted communications, suggesting that other alien species are mobilizing their fleets. Some of them are scared about what's happening on Earth." Before Frank could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the command center. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Gary Nash from the communications station, "we have incoming. Multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of our solar system." "Are they hostile?" Frank demanded. "Unknown, sir. But they're big, really big, and there are a lot of them." Dr. Kevin Hughes had never been deeper in the ocean than this. His submersible, the Deep Explorer, was descending toward the massive structure that had risen from the Mariana Trench. His team included pilot Tony Martinez and systems specialist Claire Johnson. All three of them were trying to process what they were seeing on their screens. "Kevin," Claire said, her voice tight with amazement, "that's not a natural formation. Look at those angles. Look at that symmetry." The structure below them was immense, stretching beyond the reach of their lights in every direction. But what they could see was clearly artificial. Smooth surfaces met at perfect angles. Geometric patterns covered what appeared to be walls or corridors, and throughout the structure a soft blue light pulsed like a slow heartbeat. "It's a city," Tony said quietly. "An underwater city bigger than anything humans have ever built." Kevin activated the submersible's external cameras, recording everything they saw. "This has been down here the whole time, hidden beneath miles of water, waiting." Waiting for what? Claire asked. As if in response to her question, part of the structure began to change. A section of wall slid aside with smooth precision, revealing an opening large enough for their submersible to enter. That's an invitation if I ever saw one, Tony said. Kevin made the decision that would change everything. Take us in. The submersible moved through the opening into a vast chamber filled with breathable atmosphere. Their instruments showed that the air inside was perfectly safe for humans. More importantly, the chamber was filled with beings unlike anything in human experience. They were tall, at least 10 feet in height, with bodies that seemed to be made of living metal and crystal. Their skin reflected the blue light that filled the chamber, creating patterns that shifted and changed as they moved. They had no faces as humans understood them, but their heads contained structures that pulsed with the same blue light. One of the beings approached the submersible. Without warning, Kevin felt something touch his mind. Not physically, but mentally. Images and concepts flooded his consciousness, too fast and complex for him to fully understand. But some things came through clearly. These beings were ancient, beyond human comprehension. They had been on Earth for millions of years before the first humans walked upright. They had watched continents form and disappear. They had seen ice ages come and go. And through it all, they had been waiting. The images showed Kevin the truth about human development. These beings, the Guardians as they called themselves, had been subtly influencing human evolution, not controlling it, but guiding it in small ways. They had helped humans develop the right combination of intelligence, aggression, and curiosity that would make them perfect protectors of Earth. Protectors of what? Kevin managed to think. The answer came as more images. Earth was not just another planet. It was a nexus, a connection point in a vast network that stretched across the galaxy. The Guardians were part of something much larger, a system designed to protect life itself from threats too big for any single world to handle. Humanity had been chosen not to rule Earth, but to serve as the Guardians' representatives to the rest of the galaxy. Humans' natural aggression and territorial instincts made them ideal for this role. They would fight to protect their home and everything connected to it. But the images also showed Kevin something terrifying. The Guardians were waking up because something was coming. Something from outside the galaxy. Something that had been testing the network's defenses for thousands of years. Back on the surface, Admiral Frank Roberts was dealing with his own revelation. The alien fleets that had appeared at the edge of the solar system were not there to attack Earth. They were there because they were afraid of what was waking up on Earth. Captain Morrison had finally arrived back in Earth's solar system aboard the Discovery. His report to Frank was grim but necessary. The lead ship belongs to the Zerathi Dominion, Jake explained. They're a conquest species, Admiral. They specialize in destroying civilizations before they can become threats. According to our intelligence, they've been monitoring human radio transmissions for decades. And now they're here to wipe us out before we get too advanced? Frank asked. That was their plan, sir, but something's changed. My communications officer is picking up transmissions between their ships. They're confused and scared. They came here expecting to find a primitive species they could easily defeat. Instead, they're seeing Guardian ships rising from our oceans. Frank looked at the tactical display showing both the alien fleet and the structures emerging from Earth's oceans. Guardian ships? The structures aren't cities, Admiral, they're ships. Massive ancient spacecraft that have been dormant on our ocean floor for millions of years. And they're powering up. As if to confirm Jake's words, the tactical display suddenly changed. Energy readings from the ocean structures spiked dramatically. Then one by one the structures began to move. They rose from the depths with impossible grace, shedding millions of tons of seawater as they climbed toward the surface. Each ship was larger than any human city, their hulls gleaming with the same living metal that Dr. Hughes had seen in the underwater chamber. My God, Frank whispered. How many of them are there? Sensors show at least 50 major vessels, reported Lieutenant Nash. And Admiral, they're not just rising from our oceans. Similar ships are emerging from ocean worlds throughout this star system. The Guardian ships moved into formation around Earth with the precision of a military fleet, that had been planning this moment for eons. Their energy signatures were so powerful that they interfered with both human and alien sensor systems. Then, without warning, the Zarathi fleet began to move. But they weren't attacking, they were retreating. "Sir," Jake reported from the Discovery, "the Zarathi ships are powering down their weapons. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. It sounds like a surrender." Frank couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Surrender? They came here to destroy us and now they're surrendering?" "Not to us, sir. They're surrendering to the Guardians." On the main display, Frank watched as the most feared conquest fleet in the galaxy turned around and began the long journey back to wherever they had come from. But before they left, their commander sent a single message to Earth. "We did not know," the translation read. "We did not know the Guardians.